The way we represent ourselves online has devolved to the completely formatted and market-friendly presence of a Facebook page. What we've done is moved from personal, human, open-ended self-expression to completely market and computer-friendly, regimented and conformist expression. And that's because we've turned the net from a venue for self-expression to a way to render ourselves up onto the market.
The problem is that in our social media, we are the product, and we're letting others attribute value to us. You know someone or are someone that's taken down a photo because it didn't get as many likes as you thought it would. And I'll admit, I've been right there with you. We took our product off the shelf because it wasn't selling fast enough. This is changing our sense of identity. 90% of 18 to 29-year-olds are on social media. We spend on average 2 hours a day there. We don't even eat for 2 hours a day. 70% of the Canadian population is on social media. Anything we do this often is worthy of critical observation. Anything we spend this much time doing has lasting effects on us. So let me introduce you to 4 of the most common stressors on social media that, if go unchecked, have potential to become full-blown mental health issues. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. Number 1, the highlight reel. The highlights are what people want to see. In fact, when your highlights do well, you encounter the second stressor on social media, which is number 2, social currency. Just like the dollar, a currency is literally something we use to attribute value to a good or service. In social media, these likes, the comments, the shares, they've become this form of social currency by which we attribute value to something. We are tying up our self-worth with what others think about us, and then we're quantifying it for everyone to see. Third stressor on social media. Number 3, FOMO. It's a light phrase, we all throw it around. But FOMO, or the fear of missing out, is an actual social anxiety from the fear that you are missing a potential connection, event, or opportunity. A collection of Canadian universities found that 7 out of 10 students said they would get rid of their social networking accounts if it were not for fear of being left out of the loop. But what if going on social every day was a terrifying experience, where you not just questioned your self-worth, but you questioned your safety? Perhaps the worst stressor on social media is number 4, online harassment. 40% of online adults have experienced online harassment. 73% have witnessed it. And the unfortunate reality is that it is much worse and much more likely if you're a woman, LGBTQ, person of color, Muslim. I think you get the point. But what about the everyday online harassment? What about that ugly Snapchat you sent your friend with the intention of it being private, and now it's up on Facebook? And so it's just one photo. It's funny. It's just one mean comment. It's not a big deal. But when these micro moments happen over and over again over time, that's when we have a macro problem. We have to recognize these everyday instances as well. When your social media use goes unconfronted over time, that's when we see the rising levels of anxiety and depression. The FOMO, the distractions, the highlight reels, the comparisons, it's a lot, and it's all the time. I've worked in social marketing, primarily in higher education, for most of my career. That means I work with a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds, which also happens to be the most active demographic on social media. The Canadian Association of Mental Health found that as young as grades 7 to 12 students who spent 2 hours a day on social media reported higher levels of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. For those of you doing the math, that's as young as 12 years old. Social media is a tool, and it's a tool that can be used for good, for more positive groups, for revolutions. So is social media hurting your mental health? The answer is it does not have to. Social can tear you down, yes, or it can lift you up, where you leave feeling better off or have an actual laugh out loud.
Social web can do more good in the world than it can do bad. No one is alone anymore. And I actually think that's a really powerful thing. You can sit at your house and make change. And we are people who can change the world. So we now have tools. I mean, 25 years ago, we didn't have a way to impact the world in one single instant. Today we do, and it's through the internet. I absolutely believe that the possibilities and the opportunities for people to live a rich, passionate life that allows them to express themselves in all the ways that they want to, regardless of where they live geographically. I don't think it gets any better than that.
People who maybe before were lost or felt alone in their own little interests now are able to really connect with people who share what they share, this fascination with something in particular. People want to be good.
Their whole interest is hugely accelerated by the presence of the web. It can be much more creative collectively than they would be on their own. And what's happening with the web is one of its characteristics is that those communities within the web coalesce, aggregate, come together to form particular interest groups. So it seems to self-organize in very interesting ways into coordinated groups of communities.
Yeah, we're seeing patterns, and a lot of it has to do with their particular social positions, right? So the popular kids are using the technologies to try to maintain and reinforce popularity in very particular ways, and that's where we see social status becoming really critical. We also see marginalized kids who were desperately seeking some sort of support, and were often at loss, out in more traditional senses of schools or whatnot, finding a community online. And this is one of the more powerful narratives of the internet, right? Your queer kids who can actually find people like them, who can support them. They're much more willing to be public in a traditional sense because they're desperate for somebody who might be like them. For the popular kid, it's much more about being public to the school, people who will give them credit, that will give them status.
The one thing that keeps coming up is this idea of the exchange of private information. You know, how are kids exchanging or using private information as currency?
But for young people, it's about all right, fine, you can call me by my name. Why is that a big deal? It's more about the things that make you vulnerable. And so when we think about privacy and private information, it's really a question of vulnerability. And so from adult perspective, we're really concerned about physical vulnerabilities, and increasingly about psychological vulnerabilities. And for a lot of young people, it's about social vulnerabilities. So, how do I make certain that I don't get teased, harassed, bullied because of the things that I make available out there? How do I make certain that what I put out there makes me seem cool and not lame? How do I balance that? So the social vulnerability is the privacy fight for young people. To achieve status, you need to actually make yourself vulnerable at a certain level. And how do you actually do that in a way that balances the risks and the benefits?
Rebecca Sedgwick, an 11-year-old girl from Florida, received embarrassing messages on her social media. They would ultimately lead her to jump off of her town's water tower to her death. The damage was done. I'm passionate to stop cyberbullying at the source before the damage is done. I'd soon learn that she was one of a countless many. Megan Muir died 3 weeks before her 14th birthday. She hung herself in her bedroom closet. She'd received messages like, "The world would be a better place without you," on her MySpace account. The damage was done, and Megan suffered the consequences. Tyler Clementi was an 18-year-old student at Rutgers University. He was just getting used to college life and his new gay identity. One day, his roommate and a friend decided to use a webcam and a laptop to stream some of Tyler's most intimate moments with his boyfriend all over social media. The damage was done. Humiliated, Tyler took his life, jumping off of the George Washington Bridge. I wish more than anything that I could rewrite those stories. I wish I could make every perpetrator rethink what they did. But what if I could do that? What if I could stop the damage before it was done? Would Megan, Tyler, and Rebecca still be alive today? Cyberbullying is a huge problem. 52% of adolescents in the United States alone have been cyberbullied. and 38% of them suffer suicidal tendencies. A quarter of the world's population are adolescents. We're talking 1.8 billion teens. Imagine then, in this social media revolution, how more and more of them are getting on social media and more of them are being cyberbullied. Adolescents, we're kind of afraid to tell people that we're being cyberbullied. Research shows that 9 out of 10 times, victims don't tell anyone that they're being cyberbullied. What's more, why are we putting the burden on the victim to block the cyberbully? Why aren't we changing the behavior in the actual cyberbully? And it angered me. There wasn't a single effective way to stop cyberbullying, and it was a silent pandemic that was affecting so many people around the world. That's when I had an idea. I know from my research that adolescents don't think before they do things, right? So what if they didn't think before they type? What if I gave them a chance to think about what they were doing? If an adolescent tried to post an offensive message on social media, if I went, whoa, hold on, you're about to post an offensive message to someone, that could really hurt them. Are you sure you want to post this message? Would they still be as willing to do it? I had no idea, but I was ready to find out. So that year, using my science and technology skills, I created 2 software systems, and basically, they were able to compare whether an alert that prompted adolescents to think about what they were doing actually decreased their willingness to post offensive messages. 93% of the time, when adolescents receive an alert that says, whoa, you're about to post an offensive message, they change their mind. I was able to decrease the willingness to post offensive messages from 71.4% to 4.6%. My research proved that rethink before you type, rethink before you post, rethink before the damage is done is an effective, long-term method to stop cyberbullying, so choose to rethink. Rethink before you type, before the damage is done.
I'm not anti-social media, but I am conscious of the dangers of social media consumption. Now, there are 7.6 billion people on this planet. And of that 7.6 billion, about 3 billion are social media users. Facebook alone has 2.2 billion monthly active users. And those are active users. That figure doesn't include people like me who take a leave of absence every so often. 500,000, literally 500,000 people join Facebook every single day, which amounts to about 6 new profiles every second. Now, the problem with social media is that it's programmed us to behave in ways that are dangerous to our mental well-being. First, social media has created this fake world of perfection. We begin to compare ourselves to people's online controlled content. But what we cannot do, or what we should not do, is judge ourselves, criticize ourselves against what we perceive other people's lives to be. That is one of the psychological effects of social media. We've been programmed to constantly play this game of catch up, constantly catching up with the next person, competing with the next person. Second, social media has taught us to constantly be seeking social validation. People actually experience identity crisis because of that kind of social pressure. Social validation is when social media users are constantly posting for likes and attention, and they feed their ego with this false sense of confidence. True self-confidence is the only form of validation that we need. Lastly, and probably worst of all, social media has programmed us to think less. Everything is findable on Google. Social media is killing our social capital as a society, one like at a time. I believe we can reverse those habits on social media, and we can use social media for social good. Believe it or not, my friends, we can use social media to add value to our lives. I'll show you how. First, social media can be used as a tool to self-brand. Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are great tools for helping us develop our brands. And when I say brand, I don't mean he say, she say nonsense or hearsay. I mean how you consistently present yourselves or conduct yourselves online. We have to be very cognizant about what our online profiles say about us, as they could open up opportunities for us just as quick as they could close them. Another thing, social media is a great tool to help you expand your network. Social media can be used as a tool to cultivate relationships with people we actually know.
We are now seeing the negative effects it's having. Instead of rioting against authorities, many have now internalized their youth rebellion and are rioting against themselves. We need to talk to kids from very early on about how media's depictions of reality are not always accurate. We need to teach youth to be critical of what they read and see, especially on the internet. That the fight for freedom from self-hate is one of the most important youth issues we are dealing with right now.